Hey guys, what is up, and welcome back to another episode of Apologists, Ace Attorney. In the last episode, we started cross-examining Spark Brushel, and it was revealed to the court by us that Drew Misham was a forger, and he had like a hand in like something like from 7 years ago, forging evidence. And so we decided to ask him about what the actual interview was about. So yeah, let's get going with the cross-examination, not with the testimony. We already heard the testimony. Not one thing? You're sure? Yeah, sure as can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushel does interview. Leave studio. End quote. Wow. Come on. It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me Venom Misham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. Screw it up. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Oh! But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then. The witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything, Head Forthead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. And you witnessed her pouring the coffee? Of course I didn't witness it when she came in with that tray. The coffee was already poured and steaming. Let us not forget the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed. What? That last part was just a little joke. I don't think I'm gonna get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case. You're sure about that? Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candy the whole time. One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet, at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than the coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof, the possibility is there. I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it. Not yet. And possibly isn't going to cut it. Not now. Possibility isn't going to cut it. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via another route than the coffee. Proof is possible. Here goes nothing. That's not good, is it? You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, Herr Forehead, not possibilities. Of course. And, Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof on the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did! Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume? Of course. Which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? Oh! As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead, after all. Okay, so he licks the stamp. But wait, how does that explain the atropine on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of a poisoned stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order! But that doesn't... does it? Recall if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier... Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, Mr. Bishop sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp! A so-called postage stamp. End quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just run out? Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps. Not a single one. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp? Well, that certainly is a cute little frame, and by little, I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you probably should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atroquinine residue! What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The base of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You aren't saying... Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! But Prosecutor Gavin? Why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Brushel? And please, don't jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies, too. End quote. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the governor's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail! Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew red letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous! Where's your proof? Show us the evidence that this poison stamp was lent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence, per se, but things are finally starting to come together.
What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling.
I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. Isn't this the envelope, the one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. Oh! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison, on the stamp, lick, gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked?
He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox.
15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And then the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have, Herr Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago. Yeah? Is that what you've had us believe? Really? Well...
It is a bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility.
Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that became the murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence?
Well...
It was 7 years ago and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see. Very well. I move to... Oh my god. Emma, what the heck?
Well, like my Kristoff, really?
Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fraulein Detective?
Someone had to come dig you all out of the mess you're making of this case.
Mess?
You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in the envelope, easy.
Care to explain yourself, Fraulein Detective?
Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right?
That's right! The poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once! You can open it on authority of the court. Oh, well, would you look at that?
No mistaking it. That's atropine residue.
I don't believe it! A murder weapon from the past! Now, 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last! Absolutely outrageous! Tell me why! Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago?
There's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Mission figured it out.
Figure what out?
He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp.
And put his decisive evidence in a frame. You're still here?
Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razor Toothbrushel, claim this scoop as mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood by sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Shut the fuck up. Get off the stand.
Order, order, order! I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote.
Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge.
I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant.
Apollo!
I think we just won. Very well. This court finds the defendant.
Fuck you. Because of course we can't end this on the first trial. Of course we can't. Why can't you just... Can't this be a normal trial?
Tickets to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for Governor shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Head's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed, until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did?
Emma, explain that. He must have realized it was poisoned.
Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed a trap and puts the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He puts a murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang on the trap on himself? While I admit this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years.
Apollo!
I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proofs that such a thing has ever existed. What about the atroquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be atroquinine residue. But, Head, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but... even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again.
Apollo! Were we wrong the whole time?
I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice. Yes, Your Honor? Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison atroquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contains a poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right. which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of atroquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off the poison's trail is none other than... Drew Misham. The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of the fake himself, the forger? It makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue. Fakes. Forgeries.
I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face.
I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again? 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again. The victim was a fake? One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's two forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order, order, order! So you are telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake? Well, if he was the fake, then who was the real forger? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story, Mr. Justice. Show us who the real Drew Misham is. If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was... There can only be one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order, order, order! Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb even for you!
I kinda agree. I mean, Vera? A forger?
Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually, that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility. By process of elimination, the forger was Vera Misham. Well... Fascinating. We did it. Hello there, Vera. Vera Misham? You've been paying attention to the trial so far? Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger? Drew Misham. Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Frauleins, believe me. So they usually talk to me, too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes. So the forger Drew Misham was you? Yes, it was me. What? The court was in an uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. All right. Whoa. So she's the forger. She's the one. And I guess we're gonna be cross-examining her next. So yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Roll the end card.
Objection! You haven't hit like and subscribe yet. Hold it! You forgot to ring the bell to get notified whenever I upload. Take that! Click here to watch more of my videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye!